Good afternoon to you. I'm making this YouTube video for students in the English 168 WA online or not technical communication, police report writing class, and also for the in-class, criminal justice writing as well. So anyhow, I want to talk about a couple of areas today. The first one is to look at how your writing is so important in the criminal justice field. I want to talk a little bit about different options for you within criminal justice, and then I also want to look at some examples that I have from the Tribune Review. Something that you should try to do on an ongoing basis is read the daily newspaper, whether you read it online or whether you read it, if you get the newspaper. And there's an important reason for that. One of the biggest reasons that I can't stress enough is the ability to have small talk. And small talk leads to other conversations because anytime that you interview or interrogate, which means interrogate's a little bit more involved when you're trying to get a victim, not a victim, a suspect, to state what crimes he or she has done or admit guilt, you have to have a baseline sort of conversation with that person. And what a baseline conversation is, you just need to talk about a variety of different topics. So, if the person likes the Steelers or the Penguins, or maybe it's a female and they might like a certain type of music or whatnot. But the biggest point that I can't really stress to you enough is if you read a newspaper, you know what current events are. You know how to be able to lead in to a conversation because you always have ample information to speak about. A friend of mine is a textbook rep for Pearson Longman and the publisher of our textbook for this class, and he's done it for more than 25 years now. But one day we went out to lunch together, and in the back of the minivan that he was driving, I saw the stack of newspapers. I said, Ray, why do you have all these newspapers? He says, well, Mike, he said, I just like to read them. And he said, I know what's going on in the news. He reads the USA Today newspaper. He gets the Greensburg Tribune Review, the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. He looks at the Wall Street Journal. He's from Washington County. He gets a newspaper down there. And so he just reads them. And he's a very, very good rep because he's able to initiate a conversation. So that's the biggest part. I mean, a big part of your job naturally in law enforcement is to, writing, but a bigger part even is speaking, being able to communicate and connect to people. And so I stress that as being very important. The other part as well, from taking this particular class is you become more effective as far as in knowing what's happening in the news, and you can see good criminal justice investigations and ones that are not as effective. And I think that that's just really, really helpful. So I would strongly encourage you to read the local newspaper, like I said, online, or if you get it, in paper form, look at it. And a half an hour with the newspaper every day makes a significant difference. Um, I wanted to give you a comment a little bit on my background so that you know a little bit about me. And I also am doing this to illustrate a point. This is my 22nd year at WCCC. I have 20 years of full-time teaching, and then I had 2 years of part-time teaching. And since I've been at the college, I basically have taught all the different writing classes, which has been very, very helpful to me. I have taught the developmental writing, which is English 030, which is basic writing. I've taught intermediate writing, which is English 070, and that's a paragraph and essay type course. College writing, which all of you have had to take, English 161. I teach technical communication, English 162, most often. That's a class that I've gotten into more in recent years. And then I also I've taught English 163, which is business communication, and then English 164, which is advanced composition or composition 2. I teach that more in the summertime. English 165, which is fiction writing, 166, which is human services writing, and English 168, which is the police report writing course. I've also taught literature. I've done reading, the PDV courses like the PDV 160, And the other thing that I've tried to do since I've been at the college is I've taught online. We even had telecourses at one time. I've tried those. We had courses on TV that were broadcast at a couple different centers. I did that. I've taught 5.5 weeks, 8 weeks in the summer, 11 weeks. Taught night courses. I've taught Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday. So what I'm just trying to say is I've tried a lot of different formats, and when you are into teaching, you do need to present information slightly different depending on the format. Because when I have a class on, say, a Tuesday, Thursday, 5.5 weeks in the summertime that lasts 3 hours and 40 minutes, you have to present the more complicated information earlier in the class, and then later, you have time to do some group activity, group discussion, and some other types of writing that work out well. So what I'm just trying to say is it's good to be able, whatever profession you're in, to get experience across the board. And then it's also helpful to be able to present information in a number of different ways. But probably in about the last 5 years or so, I've specialized more specifically in technical communication, the police report writing, and I do the human services writing, like I said, but I also do college writing on a regular basis. So it's been, good for me overall. And just something else as far as my background. I have a bachelor's degree in business and marketing, which you never thought I would be getting into teaching English. But I had some English courses when I was in college, and I really enjoyed those. And then I have a master's degree in the teaching and writing from San Diego State University. I lived out there when I was in the Navy. And then most recently, I went back to school, and then I have a master's degree in professional writing, which I found to be very helpful. I took it online through Chatham University, and I really enjoyed it. It was informative. I know I've taken about 10 or 15 classes at WCCC, credit classes, lots of computer classes. Um, I also took like abnormal psychology because that subject really interested me. Most recently, I've taken a couple of non-credit courses on online teaching and advanced online teaching, which I found interesting. I've taken acting courses and ballroom dancing. I'm just saying, though, no matter what you get into, no matter if you're in teaching or law enforcement, try to develop and try to use your skills in a variety of different ways, and I think it helps. But on the other hand, too, in law enforcement, you are going to have to start to specialize at a certain point, and that'll be a topic that I will talk about a little bit now. On Friday, in the in-class criminal justice writing, I had Detective Tom Moran come into the class, and he's a really good speaker. He comes in twice in a semester, and he has done that for probably at least the last 10 years. He has taken us up to the Westmoreland County Courthouse and so on. But I just wanted to mention to you a little bit about his background that you may find this to be helpful, because it shows in law enforcement how much you can grow and how much you can do. Um, Detective Tom Moran and District Magisterial Justice Joe DeMarcus both got out of the military at the same time. And so they came to WCCC and got their associate's degree in criminal justice. And so then right after that, I know that Joe DeMarcus worked for the Jeanette Police Department. I think when he left, he was a captain or a lieutenant, so he had worked his way through the ranks. Same thing with Tom Moran. He started with the Ross Draver Police Department, and I know he worked there at least 5 years, probably even more. But he developed good writing, good speaking skills, and so then he decided to, he got hired by the Westmoreland County Detective's Office, which is under the DA John Peck. And so Tom said when he first started working there, he would do a burglary in the morning, maybe a homicide in the afternoon, perhaps white collar crime later in the day. And so, covered the whole gamut just as all the other detectives in the office did. And but then he started to specialize, and his specialty is white collar crime. That's what he decided to get into. And another of the detectives, Detective Berkey, from the county detective's office, he also handles that. Judge Joe DeMarcus, like I said, he's a district magisterial justice in Jeanette. His specialty was crimes against women and children. So that's what he really focused on. And so it takes a different kind of skill set, to work on that. Because, for example, Joe said, when you deal with younger children, he said, sometimes you want to think like, maybe I'll put on a Disney shirt, or, I'll take things slower. And, just to get to know the child. And obviously an adult has to be there, and oftentimes there's a psychologist. But when you deal with younger children, or that you deal with people who were victims of sexual assault, or certain types of crimes, like I said, he dealt with, especially was more against crimes against women and children. It takes a different skill set, and there are some people that are really good at that. And then some of the detectives work on drug cases. Some of them work, specialize more in homicides. They all deal with homicides, assault, different felonies, and so on. So anyhow, I just wanted to give you a sense that as you get further into law enforcement, you will start to specialize, and you will start to develop a niche. And it'll probably be something you really enjoy or really like to get into. And so, that's a useful point. To continue on with Tom Moran, though, after he started with the detectives, he ended up getting his bachelor's degree at Pitt, and he also got his master's degree in criminal justice through Pitt. And so he's taught for WCCC for many years, as is Joe DeMarcus. And then for a time, he was director of safety and security at Pitt of Greensburg. And while he was there, he ended up, getting an automated report writing system that's on the computer. It used to be on file cards, and now it's much more automated. The police officers now they all have a 4-year degree. They have to go through this certification. So he did a really interesting job there, and I believe he worked at Pitt maybe 5 or 7 years, and then he went back to Westmoreland County. But he said, as a county detective, you are trained on an ongoing basis on extracting data from cell phones, looking at crime records, interviewing, interrogation, you name it. I mean, they're trained on an ongoing basis, and that's good for the detectives, but it also helps them to solve crimes and deal with crimes more, effectively. If you work for the state police, or oftentimes if you work for one of the bigger police departments, such as Greensburg, Monroeville, and some others, there are many opportunities for you, and I just really wanted to give you a sense of that. So continue to educate yourself, continue to go through further training. If you can, get a bachelor's degree. If you want to go beyond that, it's helpful. It opens up many doors. It just helps you to go to, another level as far as that goes. Even in the state police, most people think, if I become a state trooper, I'll work on the highways, deal with assaults and other types of crimes and so on. Yes, that is definitely a big part of what the state police does, but think of some of the other elements of the state police. Obviously, they have troopers that investigate homicides. They have a whole group of people that deal with motor vehicle inspection, or they stop trucks along the highway, inspect them. They inspect school buses. The state police has fire marshals. They have crime scene investigators, so they have people that do that. There's a trooper at WCCC, Trooper Glenn Foley, who deals with computer crime and computer forensics, and so that they have a major in that at the college. So that's a definite type of crime. Of course, white collar crime, fraud, and so on. So there are many areas. I used to have Trooper Brian Burden in class before, and he worked for the state police. But I mean, he was trained in homicide. He was trained in hostage type situations, dealing with people on that. As far as he had a whole array of training, and so. As I said, as you get into law enforcement, make yourself open to those types of training and opportunities, and it will make you so much more effective. I've taught this class for at least 10 years, probably longer now, and Detective Tom Moran comes in on an ongoing basis.
I've had Trooper Brian Burton in class, and then he also came back as a speaker. And he started at WCCC, got his associate's degree, got a bachelor's degree, and he went on and he finished a master's degree. So I believe he's into teaching now. I've had
Assistant DA Kelly Hamers that came in. She's a very, very good speaker. We go up to Judge Jim Falcon's courtroom, oftentimes behind Founders Hall. He's an attorney. Some of the magistrates are former police officers and so on. But that's what he is, and he's a very good district judge. They're called district magisterial justice. And of course, the judge from Norvelt, Roger Eccles, used to be a Westmoreland County detective, focusing
on drug cases and so on. And Judge Joe DeMarcus, as I mentioned before, him and Tom Horan have a long connection, and he works in Jeanette, but he's spoken in the class before. Chief Jim Davis, the Director of Safety and Security at WCCC, who was an undercover officer, he comes into the class and speak. I've had Detective Mark Zupan, who unfortunately a few years ago passed away. He was a former corrections officer, and he became a Westmoreland County detective. And so you're going to have many opportunities for you. With a 2-year associate degree, there's going to be certain opportunities for you. Like I said, if you get more education, it gives you an opportunity to get into the FBI or the Justice Department and other areas. So, it's good for you to be able to, expand your skills somewhat. And, through WCCC, we also have a public safety and training center where many of the local police departments train, and there's other opportunities as far as that goes. And I mentioned to you before, we also have a municipal police officers academy through WCCC that students can enter. Right now, it costs about $3,000. You can go through the full-time or part-time program. It'll help you because they had about a 98% placement last year, and they've been operating for about 40 years. Obviously, if you get hired with the state police or with the sheriff's department and so on, they provide training. But in some police departments, they just don't have the money. And so, if you wanted to be in law enforcement, especially locally, considering going to the Municipal Police Officers Academy at WCCC would be an advantage to you. On the notes for today as well, I went through some different cases that were in the Tribune Review, and I just wanted to talk about those briefly because I think that they illustrate some points as far as on the importance of your writing skills. The first one dealt with a man named Podlucky, who owned the La Nature Bottling Company there right next to WCCC in Latrobe, and he was involved in fraud and so on. Detective Berkey from the county detective's office handled that. But if you read the article, it explains, the extent of the fraud. And it would take, a longer period to investigate this. Some of these cases will last a year or two that they really have to look in them much more in depth. There was a homicide recently up in Ligonier with Dr. Mansour, and you can read that article. But that's a type of case that the detectives from the county will deal, and then the local police also deal with it as well. There was a case of a pastor at a local church, and as I look in the article, the investigation started in 2011, and it's still ongoing. So sometimes they take some time. I had a student in class. Her last name was Doherty, and her sister, who was mentally challenged, was murdered by this group of 6 people in Greensburg. And so the Greensburg police got involved with that, as the Westmoreland County detectives did. But you can imagine the level of preparation and the level of involvement with that particular case as far as investigating, what happened, who all was involved, and all the evidence and everything. So it'll be costly and involved, but it gets pretty intense. There's another case that Detective Moran spoke about when he was in class this past Friday. There was a theft of the silver pellets from this company near Murraysville in that area. And so there were 6 people that were involved. And something that Detective Horan told us that was interesting that I never knew. Westmoreland County Emergency Management has this device, and it can plot the exact latitude and longitude of a particular place. So he had to go to they had to go to this field, and there were these silver pellets were buried, and so the Westmoreland Emergency Management went with them, and then they said this is the latitude and longitude where we found this thing, or if there's a body found out in the woods somewhere. That's really helpful to use that particular information. And in this particular case, obviously they had impound vehicles. Detective Moran said in one vehicle they impounded it, and then they had to take off the take out the rear wheel, and inside there were these silver pellets that were unique for that were stolen from this company, so they were able to identify them. And this is something that he told us that I found interesting, is when you go to court, you have to deal with discovery. So, which means that the prosecution, if they have information, it all has to be turned over to the defense. If the defense has information, it also has to be turned over to the prosecution. Detective Moran said it took approximately 12 hours on a Saturday for this particular case of the silver theft, of all the telephone records. They said that they were amazingly involved, like all the people were calling one another that was in this group, and some other records that he had to copy. So it took him an entire day to put these all onto these discs and make 6 copies if that's what they needed. So you can see the attention to detail. And he also had mentioned to us before that when you write, sometimes as many as 3 days a week is involved with writing. And then the other example that I have is Dr. Carl Long, who was actually just released from prison recently. He was a podiatrist from Ligonier who was involved with a situation where he strangled his wife, put a dry cleaning bag over her head, and she suffocated. And so Tom Moran said that case took approximately 4 years. Actually, when it started, he was with the county detectives, and then he went to Pitt of Greensburg. It was kind of like he left the county detectives, and then he went to Pitt of Greensburg. It might have even been longer than 4 years, but anyhow, he had to be called to testify on a number of different occasions. And the point that he had mentioned is that he had to look back at his report all this time. So your writing is really, really important, what you write. And something that he said that he does is he uses a tape recorder, a dictaphone, and then he'll talk into it, and then he gives it to one of the secretaries in the office, and that's how he does all his interviews, and that's how he gets his reports together. One suggestion that they have in our book, which I find to be very, very helpful, is use a pad or a tablet or or whatever for your notebook. If you want to fit it into your back pocket or into your purse, or you want to make it so you're able to write, but you have a flashlight in your hand, and so you're able to write your notes and so on. And you don't have to write really in depth. You just have to get enough information so that you can, write your reports effectively. When you do your reports initially, you're just writing a brief narrative as far as what happened, and then you have a certain amount of time that you file charges with the local district magisterial justice in your area, and you do that. So that's very, very important to do. And even when you go to court, when you go to the district magistrate level, you have to be able to testify as to why you're filing certain charges, why you think these charges are applicable. In some cases, the assistant DA will represent the police side, but in many cases, you're going to have to testify yourself, and it's incumbent upon you to obviously know the law. And the other point that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to write search warrants, and typically those are taken to the district magistrate level. At very rare cases, they're taken to the court of common pleas, but that's another type of writing that you have to do. And you can see in that one article with the Dr. Mansour case that they had to get a search warrant and do that. With the case of the theft, the $7 parish in Yukon, they had to get search warrants on that and had to specify as far as like what they were looking for. So those are some of the types of writing, and those are some of the types of things that you're going to have to do on an ongoing basis, as a police officer, as a detective, as an investigator and so on. So you'll have lots of good opportunities. But I thought while this was fresh in my memory, I would cover it today. Thanks.